We are in middle of Torah Yud Gimel in Likutey Moharan, in middle of part 5 in Torah Yud Gimel Torah called Ashrei Hashgacha. In part 5 of this Torah, Rabbi Nachman is explaining how this process that the tzaddik does, the chacham, the Talmid Chacham tzaddik, when he gives over Torah and draws Torah, which is the way that he draws the Hashgacha upon Am Yisrael, the vision of Hashem, he draws it to Am Yisrael to be seen in the eyes of Hashem, which is the experience of Hashgacha. That is by drawing the Torah down to Am Yisrael. And drawing the Torah down to Am Yisrael comes through a process of Mayin Nukvin and Mayin Dechurin, the female waters and the male waters, which causes a unification, because every time you draw down new light, new shefa, new chiyus, new life energy from the Rabbanu Shalom, it has to come through a yichud, through a unification from the worlds above. That's how it is drawn down. Okay? It is known that the Baal Shem Tov used to do yichudim constantly and all the time, in every movement, in every thought, in every detail of his experience in life was always his intention was always to cause a yichud in Shamayim in everything that he did. And causing a yichud is just doing the opposite of what people usually do from the animal soul. The animal soul of a person, or the teva of a person, the gashmiut of a person, the physical aspect of a person is always trying to control things and is as a separate being. He's always trying to control things as a separate being and trying to make things work as a separate being. It's always living from the illusion of separateness. Whereas, to explain that more, the point of that is that is what incoherence is all about. Okay, it's about living from a place of separateness, of pratim, as opposed to klalim. Taking things and separating them and making distinctions between them and separations between them in as many ways as possible. And because things are separate and things are disconnected from each other, and everything that you see, I'm speaking from the animal soul, from the animal self, from the teva, from the gashmiut, because everything is seen as a separate being, and every day and every moment. There's always looking at the disconnection between one part and the other part, and therefore because everything is because you're living from that place of disconnection. So that's where all of the bad midot come from. That's where all the negativity comes from. And that's where all of the ego comes from. Anger and frustration and lust and pride and depression, apathy and grief and sadness. All of these midot come from that living from that place of separation, of disconnection, of wanting to figure out things and work out things as a separate entity. Living from a place, it's basically living from a place of kfira, where a person is an atheist, where a person does not believe. He's living from a place of not believing in Hashem, not believing in the force that unifies all of the details in the reality, not believing in the force that creates everything that is in the universe, and is constantly creating everything in the universe, and therefore everything in the universe is really only existing because of this one force. It's the opposite of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Right? That's what incoherence is. And because of that, it causes death. That's where death comes from. The Ilana Demota, or the Eitzadat Tovara. The Eitzadat Tovara, and the death that has plagued humanity since the sin of Adam Arishon, comes from this way of living, the separation, the concealment of Hashem's oneness, the concealment of the truth of reality. And when a person lives from that place of that illusion, that concealment of the truth, then their actions and their thoughts and their speech is all informed by that belief system, by that reality of separation. And so it further it increases more of that separation and that disconnection from source, and that's what causes death, and that's why things are temporary and things are not able to continue living, because the only force that gives us life is the tzura. When you look at reality, and you know that the reality is made up of the guf and the neshama, the body and the soul, and we called it in the past also chomer and tzura, matter and the form of matter. Okay, what gives matter its form, its life, that's the life energy. So the matter is always the many details of many separate parts of reality, all the different cells and all the different atoms, and seeing everything as a separate being. Whereas the soul is what unifies. It's a unifying energy, and it unifies. That's why the Torah says, Rashi brings this. Rashi says that the reason why by Am Yisrael, Shivim Nefesh Livnei Yaakov, there are 70 souls to the house of Yaakov, but Rashi says that they're called Nefesh. Nefesh is singular. The 70 souls of the household of Yaakov are all called one Nefesh. And why are we called one nation, right? And the reason why Rashi says is because we have one God, because we all believe in one Hashem. And whereas by Esav, so even though they had way less than 70 at the point that the Torah calls them, where the Torah is speaking about them, they had less than 70, but they were called in plural as many. And the reason why is because each one of them believes in something else and in someone else, in a different force, in a different energy, in the separateness of reality, in the illusion of separateness, which is in reality, which is seen through it in reality. And so the point of that Rashi is that when you believe in the oneness of Hashem and you live from that place, so then you are living in a reality that is unified. That's coherence that you're experiencing. And so then everything is unified and everything is connected. And that's where life comes from. Life comes from that reality, that experience. The experience of life is an experience of being connected to something greater and living from that place, as opposed to being separate. When you have nowadays you can have a wonderful mashal for this, and you have an appliance. As long as the appliance is connected to the wall, it has the electricity constantly. It's constantly, you can use it constantly. But then you have appliances that you disconnect it from that, and so it only works on the charge that it has within it. Okay, so that's the difference between living in a reality of being connected to the oneness of Hashem, where you're constantly connected. You're constantly plugged in to the life source. Whereas when you see yourself as a separate entity, so then you only have the life energy that you were given at birth, and then that's where death comes from, because then there's a limit to that. There's a limit to that. Not only that, but even the time that that appliance is being used when it's disconnected from the wall, every moment of its use is really death, because every moment it's using up its life energy, and that's what death is, right? So that's why the Gemara says about Rishaim that even when they're alive, the sinners are considered dead, because every moment of their life is another moment of death. They're living death. Whereas tzaddikim, even when they're dead, they're considered alive because they're constantly plugged into source, to Hashem, to the life energy. And so that's the difference between, and that's why in order to draw life energy, in order to draw this chidushim of Torah, in order to draw the Hashgacha of Hashem, you need a unification from all the worlds above. Unification is coherence. It's a completing the circuit, so to speak, right? And that's where it's drawn from. And that's where that life energy is drawn from. The Hashgacha is drawn from that. Torah is drawn from that. Chidushi Torah is drawn from that. When you sit down and you learn Torah, and you learn and you understand new Torah every day, you are drawing new life energy. You are causing a unification to happen, even though you may not be aware of it. But if you now understood Torah in a new way, or you now understood a new part of Torah, a new piece of Torah, a new chiddush of Torah, even a new halacha. Rabbi Nachman says, even every new detail of knowledge of Torah that you accumulate is the definition of the success of a person, of success of the soul of a person. That's the hatzlacha of a person. Every detail that you add in your knowledge accumulation of Torah, that you accumulate one increment, 1 point, 1 detail, that's the hatzlacha. That's the hatzlacha of your soul. Okay, because it must be that if you right now understood something new, learned something new, you have caused beforehand, in that process there was a unification. And that unification is drawing down to your new life. And there's no greater success than that. And so when this tzaddik is drawing down this Torah to the Am Yisrael, to the Yidden gathered around him, he has to cause unification. That happens through this 2-step process, elevating the female waters and bringing down the male waters. And Rabbi Nachman says that this process rectifies the 2 types of merkava. There are 2 types of merkava, for lack of a better definition, chariots of Hashem. Merkava is an aspect of Malchut, and it's an aspect of the glory of Hashem being revealed. The glory of Hashem being revealed, and that's what we're speaking about. Really, it's about drawing down the light of Hashem to the universe, to the creation, to the lower worlds, from the creator to the created. Okay, so the aspect of the created is the chariot that becomes a vessel or a throne for the creator. And so that's what Merkava is all about. Merkava is always the aspect of the created being becoming a throne or a vessel for the honor, the glorifying of the creator. Okay, honoring and glorifying, sanctifying Hashem, the creator. That's what a chariot is, right? What's a chariot? Even in the simple understanding of a chariot, that's where the king, that's where the king's glory is drawn down and respected and glorified from the subjects. And so the upper chariot and the lower chariot are rectified through this process. Rabbi Nachman explains, through the elevating of the female waters and lowering of bringing back down the male waters, and so that happens from above and from below. And so now Rabbi Nachman is explaining more in detail what are these aspects that we have in the Merkava. And he explains how the Merkava has 3 categories. There's a nefesh, the soul, there's the throne, the kisei, and there's the one sitting upon the kisei. And in each one of them you have all the 4 animals of the Merkava, the Aryeh, Nesher, Shor, and Adam. These are the 4 animals in the Merkava. Aryeh is the lion, Nesher is the eagle, which is the king of all of the birds. Shor is the ox, and Adam is the man. Okay, so we spoke about yesterday how Aryeh, the lion, the word lion, Aryeh, it sounds like the word Ariti mori im besami. Ariti means that I gather, and so the first part of the process here is that the tzaddik has to gather the desires and the wants and the lusts, even if they are bitter, they're coming from a hungry soul, a soul that is disconnected from the light. And the tzaddik gathers that together with the sparks of good desires and good wanting, which is among the people surrounding him. So that's Agriti Mori, I gathered. Mori is also sounds like Marat Nefesh, bitter soul, which is hungry, it is lacking light, the lusts and the desires of the lust of the bitter soul, together with Bisami, together with the sweet smelling spices, which is the sparks of good desires. He gathers all of them, and then you have the shor in the Merkava, and the shor in this part of the Merkava called the Nefesh, the category of Nefesh, the aspect of Nefesh, and that shor, the ox, is the aspect of the tremendous light that is added on. So the next stage, as soon as you gather all of these sparks of wants, all these sparks of nefesh, when nefesh, we spoke about how the nefesh is the wanting part of the person, you gather them, and just by gathering them and combining them together, there's a tremendous light that is added to all of them as a whole. Okay, so this is already adding the different parts into one. Every time you add parts into a one, you are adding tikkun. That's what the world of tikkun is all about. The world of tikkun is about combining things into a proper system where everyone is helping everyone. Achdut. Okay, like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai spoke about. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai spoke about how he was living in this world of tikkun, and he was causing this world of tikkun to be perpetuated and increased in the world and on multiple levels through the tremendous achdut that he had, him with his chevra, with his all the tanaim that learned by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And that's what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, Anan bechavibuta talya milta. By us, our whole everything is totally, everything is dependent by us on the tremendous love that we have among us, the tremendous love and tremendous achdut that we have among us. And that's why also the Arizal speaks about the importance of that achdut that you have among people that are learning together by a rabbi, by a yeshiva, and by a chabura. Rabbi Nachman speaks about the Arizal spoke about it, and how he said how important it was. And even not only that, the Arizal, when he passed away, he said that the decree from Shamayim that he should pass away at such a young age was because there was a certain machloket that broke out within the Chavraya, and because of that, it caused a certain judgment in Shamayim, and that's where the decree happened that the Arizal should pass away. And he knew about it, and he told them about it, and he warned them that, beforehand, that they should stay be'achdut and in love. But any arguments is the worst thing in the world is an argument, because arguments and anger among people is basically is just living the state of death. Because as we said, death is all about separateness. And before this world, there was the world of the Tohu, and we spoke about it briefly, about the 7 kings that in the process of creating the world, that Hashem created these 7 kings, and they weren't able to continue to survive in that state. And one of the reasons why, the Arizal explains, and the Zohar explains, is because they were created in a state of created in a state that metaphorically one on top of the other, and they were not created in a system where one is able to give to and receive from all the other parts in that system. They were created in a system of one on top of the other, and because of that, the bottom one is only wanting to receive from the top one, and the top one is only wanting to receive from the top one, the one above him, and he's not wanting to give to the one below him, and that's why they broke what's called shvirat kilim. Their vessels broke. Their vessels, the fragmentation of the vessels of the 7 kings. That's what it's all about. Whereas the world of tikkun that's why when you look at the sefirot, the way they're arranged now, and the way that you see them arranged in the diagrams and the pictures that you see in the Kabbalah Sfarim, is that they're arranged in a system where they're all giving and receiving from all the other 10. Just like a human body. The human body is the form of the 10 sefirot in a perfected system. Okay, in a system where every cell in the body is giving and receiving from all the other cells, and it's one whole organism. And that's how we have to see ourselves. That's the whole point in Achdut. Achdut is all about seeing ourselves as part of one body. Ke'ish echad belev echad, right? Like one man with one heart. When Bnei Yisrael received the Torah, they reached that point, because the Torah is the light that unifies. The Torah is that light. We keep on coming back to the same point. It's the life light. It's the light of unification, and it's what's called the name of Hashem called Ma, Shem Ma, and that's why when Bnei Yisrael received the Torah, they were at that point of tikkun, in that state of tikkun, and that was the tikkun for the Chet of Adam Arishon as well, right? At that point when they received the Torah, the venom of the primordial serpent was removed from them, and so we are saying here how this aspect of the ox in the Merkava, the shore is this light that is added to the nefesh, because you're gathering and all the parts and gathering them into one. Okay, and why is it called light? Why is it called shor? Shor is seeing. Seeing, sight is all about light. Why is that seeing? Why is that light? So he explained, Rabbi Nachman explained that the light is the tikkun for the hungry soul. The hunger comes from that lack of light. And then, so let's just continue here. כעיקר הרעב מחמת היעדר האור, כמו שאמרו חכמינו זיכרונם לברכה, ויענך וירעיבך ויאכילך את המן, מכאן שהסומה אינו שבע. Hunger, the hungry soul, that now is being satiated through the light. The reason why it was hungry is because it was disconnected from the light. It was blind. כעיקר השובע מחמת האור שיראה בעיניו. Because satisfaction, satiation, comes from the ability to see, which is the aspect of the light, to have that light. Without being able to see, then the soul is not satiated, it's not fulfilled. Your desire is not fulfilled. Because the sight of the eyes is better than the wandering of the soul, meaning the wandering of the soul, the soul is wandering meaning it's seeking, it is lacking, because it is lacking marei einayim, the sight of the eye. So that's an explanation on the pasuk in Kohelet. But when you purify your soul with the clarity of this light, and then through that, the hungry soul is filled with all good, with an abundance of good, and it's satiated in this way. The aspect of that he will satiate with all of this clearness. Tzachot is like a clarity, a beautiful clarity of light. Tzach, the tzach is a similar word. It's a clarity of light that Hashem will satiate your soul with. Okay? And this is the aspect of shor in the Merkava, the ox. Shor is ashorenu, like the word in the Torah. Ashorenu is to see, to look. Okay? Lishon histaklut, it's a word that connotates gazing. Bechinat marei einayim mahaloch nafesh, the aspect of the sight of the eyes, which rectifies the wandering of the soul. And moving on to the next part in the process, v'nefesh shebibchinat nesher shebibchinat nefesh, the eagle in this aspect, in this category of nefesh in the Merkava, ze achidush shenitchadesh hanefesh ba'aliyata bibchinat ibur v'ze b'chinat nesher ki titchadesh kanesher meoraychi. Nesher is the novelty, it's the renewal of the soul. When the soul, all of these souls, these souls, we said all the desires, the lusts, the bitter souls and the sweet souls, the bitter desires and the sweet desires, the good desires are all gathered and they're all elevated. And when they are elevated above, so they are renewed. What does it mean they're renewed? They're receiving new life in a perfected form. They're no longer disconnected. That desire, that passion is now satiated and is now created as new, and is as a state of being fulfilled. It's no longer disconnected. When something is far from its source of life, so then it wants more. It lacks. It feels, it's the wandering soul. It lacks, it wants more, it seeks more, it feels bitter, it feels hungry. But when it's renewed, it's like a baby it has just been born in the hands and the arms of his mother, and he feels everything is perfect. He has everything. He's been fed, he's been cleaned, he's in the warmth of his mother's arms, and he just feels completely surrounded by that love. And so that's the state that we are bringing these souls, these nefesh, nefashot, we're bringing them to that state, to that renewal. Okay? So this is the aspect of the nefesh. He says, when it goes up to the malchut, all of these nefashot, they're all brought up to the malchut. And then they are like a child in the womb of the mother. So he says a different mashal. Rabbi Nachman says not like a child that is in the arms of his mother, but a child in the womb is experiencing that even more intensely. That's why the womb is called rechem. Rechem is a lashon of rachamim, completely surrounded by compassion. Okay, that's what grows a person. That's what how a child, a seed, grows into a person. It's the light, the energy of compassion that grows a person. And the opposite of that, it kills a person, right? The lack of compassion, which is anger, frustration, machloket. But the ubar b'me'ei imo is experiencing that in the deepest, greatest form. This is what happens to these sparks of nefesh. They are elevated to the malchut, and they are in ibur in the malchut, and everything in the world, as we know in Kabbalah, has to go through these three stages in order for it to come to its complete maturity. Ibur is when it's in pregnancy, as an embryo. Yanika is when it's born and it's nursing, and then mochin, it's the mature state of consciousness. And so at first, these sparks are brought up to the malchut, and they are there in the malchut in ibur, and they are being renewed at that point. They're being born again, completely new. They're being born again now through that and that stage. And so that renewal that they are experiencing when they are in ibur by the malchut is this aspect of nesher. The aspect of the eagle is always seen as a renewal. Why is it seen? It's this pasuk that Rabbi Nachman brings in many times in Likutei Moharan, that says in Tehillim, it connects and compares the eagle to the renewal of that a person has in youth. The pasuk says, "Titchadesh kanesher me'oraychi." Your youth is renewed like an eagle, like that of an eagle. That's the pasuk in. I think it's some of the Meforshim bring that it's they bring this idea of the phoenix. So it could be eagle, but the phoenix is like from that same species, or that story that we know about this type of eagle, which we know as the phoenix from the mythology and all that renews itself, right? It's constantly renewing itself. And so that's what this metaphor, this mashal we see in Tehillim is all about. But it's not a myth. It's actually brought down in the Midrashim about this idea, about this eagle that renews itself. And that's what it's based on. That's what this is based on. This pasuk is based on that. That's what David HaMelech is referring to. That's what the Meforshim explain. Rashi explains that. And so that's the titchadesh kanesher me'oraychi. It's the renewal, constant renewal. The Adam sheba nefesh, and now we're up to the fourth part of the Merkava in the category of nefesh. And the fourth one is Adam. זה בחינת ויהי האדם לנפש חיה, כי האדם בחינות מסכנה ועתירה, כמו שכתוב נעשה אדם בצלמנו עתירה, כי דמותנו מסכנה. ושנתלקטו הנפשות, אזי הם בבחינת אדם, נפשות גדולות וקטנות, בבחינת מסכנה ועתירה. So this is something that we have to really try to understand. It's not at all clear. Rabbi Nachman does not expand on it and doesn't unpack it so much. He leaves it as is. Rabbi Nachman says some things here that it seems like we might not understand right away. Why is he saying that? But he says it. Okay, so we'll have to come back to that and see how we can understand it. But Rabbi Nachman says like this. He says, the Adam is the aspect of Vahi Adam lenefesh chaya. The aspect of man became a living soul. Okay, so this is the aspect here in the process where these nefashot that were elevated now have been brought to life. They are now alive. They are now born. Okay, they are now born, and they are now new chidushim of Torah, new energy, new life energy. Okay, Vahi Adam lenefesh chaya, and man became a living soul. These sparks, so Rabbi Nachman says that Vahi Adam lenefesh chaya, the Adam in the Merkava, is the aspect where these sparks of nefesh They've been renewed, they've been elevated and renewed, and now they are brought to life. And that's the new Torah, the new Torah that is drawn down from the tzaddik by the Talmid Chacham. And so that's this aspect of Adam. And then Rabbi Nachman says something interesting that we don't really understand how it's connected, but we'll get back to it, Bezrat Hashem, and we'll understand it better and better. So Rabbi Nachman says that this aspect of Adam is made up of two parts. It's made up of impoverished and wealthy. There are impoverished souls and wealthy souls. Okay, these are big nefashot and small nefashot. And he says that Adam, when you have this soul that is being born, there are these two types. Miskene va'atire, and he says that we actually see it in the Tikkune, in the beginning, in the introduction of the Zohar. The Akdama of the Zohar says on the pasuk in Bereshit, Na'aseh Adam betzalmenu kidmutenu. The pasuk says that let us make man in our image, in our likeness. In our image, says the Zohar, it refers to it atire, wealthy, and in our likeness is the aspect of impoverished. Miskine. Miskine is impoverished. So these are the two parts in creation of the nefashot that are included in Adam, that is brought to life. Says Rabbi Nachman, when these souls, these nefashot are gathered, azayhem bibchinat Adam, nefashot gedolot uktanot, bibchinat miskine ve'atire. So they are just like mankind was created with these wealthy souls and the impoverished souls, the big nefashot and the small nefashot, so too these sparks of nefesh that were elevated and now brought down as a new creation of Torah that is drawn down to us, that also is created and brought down in the same way that man was created, with aspects of big nefashot and small nefashot, wealthy sparks, wealthy souls, and impoverished souls. That's what Rabbi Nachman says here. How does it connect to what we had before, and where is he going with this? He just leaves it at that for now. And Bezrat Hashem will continue seeing the other parts of the Merkava and the coming Shiurim.